Welcome back to episode 3 of Collaborate Forever. We stopped by Good Style Shop. That's located in the heart of the Madison Isthmus at 817 East Johnson, just about a block south of Bernie's Rock Shop. For those of you not quite familiar with the area, we had a nice discussion with vintage clothing proprietor Pete Benck, and he kind of walked us through his history and how he started basically collecting vintage clothing, his shop, which started in 2009, his sources of creativity, the store itself, which is gorgeous. We talked about his upcoming vintage flea market, which he has spearheaded. This year, it is September 4th and 5th, Saturday and Sunday, over at the Garver Feed Mill on the east side of Madison. It is the state's largest vintage clothing trade event.
Hey, I'm Pete Benck. I'm the owner of Good Style Shop, and I have been for about a decade or more. Yeah, you can see me at Good Style Shop nearly all the time. I'm always around. I'm the guy behind the curtain, but now we've got a whole team of vendors, so maybe if you don't see me in front of the store, you'll see me, I don't know, putting up flyers or digging around in the bins or, you know, wherever you're going to find me, I'm always around. Or maybe at Robin Room. Sometimes I always get a drink over there. So, yeah. And hey, I gotta say, I'm thrilled to be a part of this podcast, the third podcast, Collaborate Forever. What a thrill! Thanks for having me.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah,
we are on East Johnson, in the heart of the Isthmus, in Madison, Wisconsin, right?
Yep. Sometimes colloquially, I'll say, if you know where Bernie's Rock Shop is, which everybody does, shout out to Bernie's Rock Shop, but they've been around for 50 years. So sometimes when people say, "Well, East Johnson, what do you mean East Johnson?" I say Bernie's Rock Shop.
Are we also close to Robin Room?
Yeah, Robin Room. They don't have a big sign out front, that neon pineapple, but that place, they've been around since 2016 or 17, and yeah, they are probably one of the best bars you can find, and it's 2 doors down from here.
Right, in between us is a tattoo shop. Correct?
Yeah, Black Moon. Mm-hmm.
Really cool. I would say city block between Bernie's and here.
I agree. Yeah.
In fact, as I'm driving down East Johnson every time, I've never actually been in the store. I've driven past it a million times. Your store is like the first prominent sort of structure that catches the eye.
Yes.
I mean, it's because it's it's kind of mundane down this way, and then all of a sudden, boom, you got the mural, which we'll touch on in a minute, and then the storefront, which is gorgeous. I mean, do you know how old this structure is? It's got to be OG.
That's a really interesting question, and my mind always goes there too. This used to be a grocery store. When it was made, I think the building was finally erected in 1899. And if you go down to the basement, you can kind of see where, they received bottles, and there's a dry storage area in the back. And, as time went on, the grocery store lasted for about a generation, and it turned into the Whole Earth Grocery Co-op. And that was, it was a member-owned grocery co-op back when Madison had, its neighborhood grocery co-ops. And this was one of them up until, I believe, the early 1970s. And from there, it was a whole sundry of different things.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, the front of the building is like classic grocery store, right? It's got the highlights across the front and then the huge picture windows.
Yeah, that corrugated glass, it sort of refracts the light from the front to the back before the advent of, track lighting and all of that. So it's kind of a nice feature. It bathes the place in natural light, which is great when you're selling all kinds of colorful textile.
So how long have you been in this? This is your second establishment, correct?
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah, good memory. We started at East Washington Street on the corner of Hancock and East Washington. Which is now being redeveloped. I tried to go find a cornerstone of the old building, but the contractor gates were too tall. I didn't want to break in, but I'm very nostalgic for that space. I used to call it a little shoebox because it was so small. I think it was about 500 square feet, if even. And that was on the corner of Hancock and East Washington. And we moved over here 2012. That was around Halloween 2012. And so it's been about a decade at 817 East Johnson.
Excellent. Let's talk about your logo quick. What was the genesis of that?
I'm glad you asked. I'm so graphic design oriented in my own way. I mean, I'm kind of autodidact about that. I put it together years ago. I just kind of was messing around with some big blocky shapes, and I wanted to spell out the logo in a really bold way. And I kind of wanted to make it modern for the time, which is kind of funny because it seems a little vintage. It's very of its time. It's like the store, like under my era, I took over 2011, and I put that logo together in 2011. And then as the years went by, I added a little motion to it, and obviously we needed to make that imprint on all of our materials. And I've never really changed it since then, and I don't really want to. I just think it's gonna stay.
Yeah, it's funny because I'm like a design photographer, graphic designer, but I'm like a font, like an addict to fonts. I love fonts, and I'm always studying them. And like, yeah, okay, so let's just say the logo is what, 10 years old?
Yeah,
roundabout. Okay.
Yeah.
Like now, that's the look. Like you're seeing a lot of these sort of blocky, like grotesque, brutalist styles.
Certainly.
And you were doing this, back then, so it's kind of circled back.
Yeah.
Are you a Madison native?
I grew up in Des Moines, Iowa, and I moved here when I was 19 to finish my undergraduate education here at UW-Madison. So I'm a Badger through and through, and I finished my degree around the same time. So and that was, oh my gosh, that was 2009. And I worked at Isthmus for a little while, and I always had a day job up until I turned 30, which was a couple of years back. Yeah, from UW-Madison, I started over at Isthmus in the ad department, and then I kind of took over this place, and I kind of was running Good Style Shop out of my back pocket, kind of, like it was a labor of love and a passion, and it was kind of more of a clubhouse back then, because we would have art installations and fundraisers, and we just like swap meets, things like that. And then pretty soon there was a dedicated audience that was looking for vintage clothing with like kind of a decidedly new eye, because there's all kinds of vintage clothing stores, but at the time a lot of young people weren't running vintage clothing stores, and so I said, hey, you know what, maybe I should just take this a little bit more seriously and accelerate things, and here we are.
Where did this design acumen come from? When you growing up, were you big into eBay? Were you a collector? I mean, where did all this come from? You certainly just didn't step into this from college, as far as curating this collection. Where is this?
Thank you. Yeah, many hands for sure. If I want to take it all the way back, I was always interested, counterculture, especially on the dandier end of things. When I was in middle school and high school, like I would go thrifting. I would make my own clothes. I would have to do a lot of my own tailoring because I have kind of an interesting fit. I'm very tall. I'm a little gangly, so it was never outside of my own reasoning to just do my own edits, or to take things in a little bit. Do dye baths and to serge my own pants and and find stuff like that. Like I always was doing those kind of hand painting stuff. I don't know. It was always natural to me, and all of that was hand in hand with the culture that I was consuming or producing. So I always thought that fashion is just the natural answer to whatever other art you're into, and so that's kind of like my home base. And I could have never imagined that I was going to be an owner of a vintage clothing store. That was never really charted for me. And I didn't know what I was going to do. I'm just kind of like that, I kind of follow my folly, I suppose. Yeah. And so, years later, this place gets started. I was so young. I was like 21, 22 when I first did this, and I incorporated the business, and I pretty easily found out that I couldn't do it myself. And I had a good friend named Phoebe who was in the Bay Area. And she kind of turned me on to this business idea in which everybody helps run the place if they contribute to the stock. And obviously the house appreciating their labor and, their talents and all of that would take kind of a smaller cut than a general consignment store, because they were running the till and they were doing their best customer service. Yeah, she gave me kind of the early pangs of how to do this, because there was a store in I think Berkeley, or where Berkeley meets Oakland, called Down at Lulu's, and it was like a hair salon and vintage clothing store, and it was just run by some scruffy upstarts, and I said, well, maybe I could sort of make that work here. And because I failed that first year because I just had me doing all the sourcing. And I quickly had to change that business model. And I shout out to Down at Lulu's. I don't know. I think they're still doing their thing, but legendary vintage clothing store. And yeah, like Phoebe always had the best ideas. And so, yeah, it got like kind of growing up and taking people's advice and just working with people and, following your folly, all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Let's go a little bit further with that idea. So the structure of the business is you have, I guess, buyers. How does this work?
That's a good question. Okay, and I'll try to be succinct. Succinct? Is that the word? I'll try to be concise with my answer here. I am the owner, so I sort of shepherd everyone. I've got a dedicated team of buyers, yes. They're consigners, but they also help operate the store. So it's not like an open consignment. And ideally we have 7 buyers for each day of the week. So it's always somebody different here. And they source stuff from estate sales, church basement sales out in rural Wisconsin, closet cleanouts, appointments, all kinds of ways that we find this stuff. I mean, you really have to do the work. You have to shake the trees to get with the fruit, and they all have their own ways of finding stuff. They have their own talents, their own eye for vintage clothing, and they bring it to the store to sell, to keep our lights on each day of the week.
And it seems like the each buyer sort of has like a particular time period that they kind of like. Does that sound right?
Yeah. On paper, that's kind of the way it started, but now we're sort of bleed into each other's areas of interest. But yeah, over the years, I've had somebody who's really into mid-century mod, like, sort of like the wiggle dresses. Think, some people would say like the Mad Men era. I don't know if that's a dated reference at this point. But like cocktail dresses and, those kinds of formals. There's one person who's really into that. And then we've got somebody who's really into like, the Edwardian, where the Edwardian, like the antique, the real like brittle, finery, like that stuff. And I've got somebody who's really into like, sportswear, like team apparel and things, and that's meeting a moment for sure. Somebody who's really into like collectible T-shirts, and then we're all denim maniacs here too in our own regard. Like I had somebody who's super into like Levi's and could date Levi's, and from miles away you could say, oh, that's a big E Levi. How many Levi's? How many does it have double stitches on the back pocket? Like let's look at this style code, and everybody's got their own area of interest within vintage clothing, but we all make it work, and it's fun. Like it should be fun.
Yeah. And it just all flows together. There's so many different eras in this store. And, looking around, I like how it's organized kind of by color too.
Yeah. So oftentimes that's a good question. That's a good point of fact here, because people will come into the store and say, hey, where's this size of this thing? It's not cataloged that way. It's not a typical department store. So everything's one of a kind. And believe me, if we could arrange it all by sizes, we would. But just because we have literally new things every day that have their own dimensions to them, we have to organize it by item type, and then within that category, we just make it aesthetically pleasing. And what's cool about this place too, like we all do so much work and dedicate ourselves to what we put on the racks here. It's all measured out. It's all the products have like their best description on it. I always encourage people, like, take a look at the tag, try it on. If it doesn't work, you can bring it back. But
Well, yeah, I think most of the time, most of the stores that I go into, it's like if it was organized by strictly just by style or by size on that, I think I would pop in and pop out if I didn't find one out. But like here, just for me, like I'm looking at these dresses and it's like looking at the patterns on them, I would be inclined to stay longer just to explore all the different textures in this place.
Yeah.
Than just in and out looking for one specific thing. I'd probably like, wow, look at the pattern on that, or look at the pattern there. And so really well done.
Thank you.
It's a great store.
Yeah, you got to keep people entertained, even if it's only for a moment. Yeah, for sure. I think of this place as kind of one of Madison's diversions out of many,
Yeah, absolutely. Switching a little to social media, I was checking out your Instagram account. So you have 9,000 posts.
Yeah.
Which is amazing. I've been on Instagram since it started in 2011, and I have 750 posts. So 9,000 is incredible. Take us through that. Are you... Well, did you find success on it? Obviously 9,000 posts is frequent.
We were very prodigious with it, I think, in the early days. So I think we started in like 12 or somewhere around there. And for a long time before the stories function, before like the more ephemeral features of Instagram, we had to just post to sell things on the internet, like, so I think at our height, at our peak in terms of Instagram productivity back then was like 5 posts a day. And yeah, like people would comment like literally on the grid, and that's how we would, sell stuff to other markets. And so, yeah, back then, I really wanted to, like, I scheduled out each day of the week, like, I don't know, 10 or 10 posts sometimes even. And yeah, that's definitely the way things were. Now, I don't know. I love Instagram. I mean, it's a great tool. I mean, I don't know who can't, who can stay away from Instagram in today's age. Instagram is the internet, but I have to sort of measure my time a little bit with it. Like I try to keep a safe distance now, just because I don't want to burn myself out.
Are you ever going to leverage it to like open a shop, like where you can shop the look?
A couple years ago, I, kind of worked the back end of everything, and I figured out how to do that. But because of all the regulations, I mean, harmonized tariff codes and, things like that, it just became so much of a burden. At least then it did, to sell one $30 pair of jeans and then have that consigned out. So I kind of got away from that, even though I was trying to institutionalize that, or like try to make a method out of that so I could do it at scale and do it fast. And it just did not pan out at the time. So I kind of left that on the bench. And now I think Instagram is more of just a signal that, hey, we've got a full-fledged e-com website. You can go to the stories and get first dibs on whatever comes our way. And so that's kind of the way it works now.
It's probably a better approach. I mean, I just set up a print shop like 6 or 7 months ago, and it's still a labyrinth of like getting the Shopify backend wired through Facebook e-commerce to Instagram. So it's a lot of work. Even now, it's a lot of work.
I know. And it's such a mystery too, because you don't always know why, Facebook deemed your item or flagged your item or something like that until it's too late. And then,
it's random.
I know.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. So I'm with you on that. I definitely, I feel your pain on that for sure.
Instagram looks to be your biggest social driver, or are you finding success elsewhere on any other platform?
That's a good question. We started in the Facebook world way back when, and I remember when we would have events, of course, we would make our own little handmade flyer, and we would just go knock on doors and just try to bring all of our friends out locally, and then we'd have a Facebook event. And that used to give us so much return. And then Instagram happened, and so Instagram slowly took over that, and that's kind of where we were. I know we're kind of like old, dusty, elder millennials now at this point, but like I just can't keep up. Like I did not do Snapchat. I don't want to even touch TikTok. I just have more. I mean, not that I'm too good to use those things. Certainly I'll have like somebody working for this shop at some point who's going to just like tend to all of that, but I have my hands in everything. And so at this point, at this juncture, and I just like, if I don't feel that social media platform, then like I'm not going to attempt it, because people can, people can sniff out inauthenticity. And so that, I guess, to answer your question, we primarily exist on those channels for sure. But you know what? And don't call this savvy business acumen. I just think it's like common sense. But you have to just squat on whatever handle. Like Good Style Shop is a very obvious, just planative, simple name. And so every time one of these new platforms emerges, I'm going to go book the name out, because that's just what you do. That's just what you do. Yeah.
So let's spend a little time talking about what collaboration means to you and some of your involvement in the community, especially in vintage fashion and all that. But just kind of run with that for a little bit.
Sure. Yeah. Collaboration. That's the name of the game around here. I've got a whole team of dedicated vendors here, one for every day of the week. And, they have their own areas of culture and art and aesthetics and stuff here in town. I've worked in the past with Communication Madison to make these cool risograph posters for Midwest Vintage Flea. That's something that comes to mind. I've worked with the university in various functions, the School of Human Ecology and MODA Magazine, Emmy Magazine, WSUM. We get a lot of attention from college age folks, and I'm grateful for them because they're always curious and they're going to be somebody. They want to, they want to learn, they want to contribute. I'm here for that. I've always been here for that. I love it when people from, the coasts who are in the capital F fashion industry come here and they buy vintage clothing, all sizes and patterns and stuff, in order to either incorporate it into their own modern line of fashion. So I think that, and then also there's other high priority vintage clothing stores on Melrose Avenue and stuff, and they'll come and buy a bunch of stuff. Yes, to resell it, but they'll also give me cool tricks of the trade. And I don't know, I'm not the most aspirational person when it comes to celebrity and being included in some higher minded thing, because hell, I got enough to keep me busy. I mean, I always say I accept all invitations. So if somebody reaches out to me and they're earnest and they're helpful and they've got a cool idea,
you're all ears.
Yeah, I'll say yes most often.
During the pandemic 2020, walk us through changes that you made, that you were forced to make, and some of the impacts that had on your business.
Certainly, yeah. I remember it being the Ides of March. It was the 15th of March when we had to close this store, and I didn't see an end in sight really at that time, but it happened to be 14 weeks where our storefront was closed. And in that time, I redeveloped our website, goodstyleshop.com. And soon that became one of the only places I could sell. But I had Instagram too, and Instagram stories. I just, I was Chicken Little. The sky was falling. I just worked to do product shots on all of this stuff that I had on hand. And so first I put all the product shots and the descriptions. I came up with some kind of way in which I had a method in which I would do the product shots. I had the copy in a copy deck, and they would make first pass on Instagram stories, and whatever didn't sell right away. And granted, a lot of those things sold. I was surprised by that. So I would post 40 things a day. I had the time. No one was coming in the store. I wanted to keep my mind sharp and I'm sure everybody did. So I'm not alone on that. But so I would take product shots, 40 things a day, and I'd put it up on Instagram stories, and half of those things would sell. The remaining things would go into the website. So we would have this this big product matrix of stuff on hand on the website, and that is the way that we survived for 13 weeks. And my vendors, obviously, they weren't coming into the store. I would go out to them. I would pick out their stuff, and I had a bunch of back product, and we all really came together, but definitely I was dancing for my dinner, I really was. And I think that it brought me closer to what I do in a lot of ways, and it made me bolder and a lot prouder of it, I put my whole self into this, and no one can knock me down after that at all.
Yeah, we've had this discussion on all the episodes up to now. It's I personally feel emboldened by this, because okay, if we can get through this, then I feel almost anything I can handle. And I mean, Matthew talked about that, about El Grito, and Scott did too. So it's kind of a good feeling.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
Wow, I can beat this from a business standpoint.
Yeah. And just from a personal standpoint too, it's perseverance,
Right.
Yeah. Older, wiser.
I think the other refrain is just, it's really brought everything into focus, what's important,
Mm-hmm.
and sense of pride.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah. No disagreement there for sure. And, as time goes on, we've had to adapt to, when we first reopened, that would have been, the end of May, I believe. Nobody knew really how to work that angle, and so I put everything on wheels, because what I did during the lockdown was I had to catalog everything. So pretty soon the storefront became a warehouse in a way, where I had everything sort of positioned in a way in which I could put it on rails or just find it, in my own little system. And so when we opened back up, Like I wanted to make sure the whole place was like sanitized. There was proper distance. Everything was on these like rolling Z racks and stuff, and it was very sparse in here. I mean, I think you were saying like there's so many colors and textures and stuff. And back when we reopened, in spring of 20. It was very Spartan in here for one of the first times ever. And it reminded me of the old days when I was first getting started, just a couple of racks and a guy,
Looking forward, can you take us through, I guess, your next big event that's happening in September, correct? Labor Day weekend?
Labor Day weekend. Yeah, it's hopefully it's going to be a nice punctuation on this crazy summer that we've been having. Yeah, it's Midwest Vintage Flea. This will be our...
that's your thing,
That's right.
You started, okay.
Yeah, we host it. Yeah, I started it in 2016, and there was only a handful of vendors at that point. And now it's grown to 40 vendors, representing, I think, 5 states this time, all around the area. There are legendary, people with like thousands and thousands of followers and have been doing it for 20 years. Like there's those vendors, and then we've got these new vendors who are, maybe, a generation under me, and they are certainly have their own eye for vintage and collectible fashion. And so we're putting everybody together. Like I really wanted a nice, palatable, interesting mix of different levels and tastes and variety of vintage clothing. And that's going to be all inside. We've had some rain that last event that we had in fall of 19, but it's all going to be inside at Garver Feed Mill for the first time. And it's going to be 2 days. We used to put all our eggs in one basket and have it one day, but now it's going to be 2 days. And so I hopefully, when people are traveling, they can get a chance to, to see it, to walk through it, to shop, have fun. Don't have to pat myself on the back too much, but I think it's a big deal for just Madison in general. Like it's just one of those things that make Madison fun to be in. And so I like to contribute to that angle. Like I want to make Madison a fun place to be.
Very cool. Just for listeners who might not be geographically aware of where we are, Garver Feed Mill is on, like, would you call it the not far east side of Madison?
Yeah.
Give us some landmarks to work with.
If you know where Old Brick Gardens is, or if you kind of just follow Atwood, so let's say you're on Willie Street and then you just kind of take that bend over to Atwood and you just maybe go maybe about a mile and a half. Yeah, it's behind Old Brick Gardens. There's so many bike trails, and it's a really, I remember when I first moved here, the feed mill was just this kind of an abandoned mill, and it was really cool for like photo shoots and stuff. I mean, it was very texture rich place, and people would tag it and but they've redeveloped it, and I got to say, like, they do an expert job over there, and I am so thrilled. We booked the space originally for spring of 2020, and naturally we couldn't do it. And so kudos to them, because they honored my commitment, their commitment. They held on to my deposit, I guess, to put it frankly. And it's up and away. I'm so excited, I gotta tell you.
Awesome. Any parting shots, like call to action, handles that you want, anything? This is your time.
Well, you know where to find me. I'm right here at 817 East Johnson Street, and I've been, and I still will be. We are open 7 days a week. I was telling you before we got started, we have very bohemian layabout hours. We start at noon and we close at 6. It just works better that way. This is kind of like an easygoing neighborhood. And so, yeah, come find us at high noon. We're here. It's somebody different every day of the week. So you're going to get somebody who has been living in Madison, working in Madison, has their own, their own aspirations, their own angles, their own talents every day of the week here. So you might meet somebody, you might find something, I don't know. It's fun. Yeah, 817 East Johnson. Come find us.
We will. Thank you. Instagram handles?
At Good Style Shop. Yep. Good Style Shop.
Same everywhere.
Same everywhere. Yeah, it's universal. GoodStyleShop.com. Yeah. Well, yeah. I just want to say, like, thank you for this. This is
Most
fantastic.
Welcome.
Yeah.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Parting question.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we'll see this in, but let's talk about your shirt.
Yeah.
That is Wisconsin deliciousness.
Isn't it really?
Oh my goodness.
What's cool about this is a handmade shirt, and I've found this fabric, this pattern on this poplin material, as a bed sheet. I've found it as a shift dress. I've found scraps of it in the world, but this was like this came to me as a men's like camp shirt, and in my size, and I love it. Like I wear it for special occasions. So this was a special occasion. Everybody seems to love it. I've had people approach me, like, can I buy that off your back, or can I like make that print into something else? And if somebody's got the idea, if somebody's got, if they want to print their own fabric and make this, I will lend you this shirt, because I would love to reproduce this shirt as well.
I mean, it is like, we've got the muskie, we've got a badger,
yep,
the state seal, we've got violet,
the state flower.
That's
yeah,
right.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just like the colors, like, I mean, what do you think that's like the 50s, 60s-ish?
This is probably like a 60s print. Yeah, for sure. It's definitely 1960s, I would say. But and it's stood the test of time.
And what type of character do you think wore that back in the day? What are you envisioning? Somebody drinking a Ham's beer with the pull tab?
Absolutely. Yeah, somebody made it for, their beer drinking, big galoot, they're a big fella, either their son or their husband or something, and somebody made this for somebody, and they had that bolt of material, and I'm sure like you would make curtains for your den or whatever out of the same stuff.
There's no label on that. You think that's a one-off?
Yeah, well, yeah, there's no label on it. Sometimes when people hand make stuff too from that era, it'll be like specially made by like Joan or something, but this one is just completely denuded. I wish there was more of a story to it, but even the little buttons are cool, like little marbled buttons. It's definitely a handmade thing, and I gotta treat it well because I love this shirt, but clothes tend to break down. It's natural fiber, so I try not to throw it in the dryer very often.
No, not at all.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a great shirt, and it caught my eye right away. So this is what you can find in this store. But
that's right.
But I mean, that aesthetic is like one of my favorite time periods. It's just so like authentic and genuine, simple, like 4 or 5 different colors.
Yeah, and it's hand forged too. There's like a lot of handwork that goes into these kinds of designs too. Yeah, certainly. I agree with your design aesthetic. Mm.
Well, anyway, yeah. Thanks for having us.
Hey, again, thank you for the opportunity. This is cool. I've never really spoken to a microphone like this before.
Sounds really good.
Yeah, doesn't it?
That's all for today. Thanks for listening. Be sure to visit collaborateforever.com for episode news, upcoming drops, and to sign up for our newsletter. Also, check us out on social media, Collaborate Forever across all platforms. See ya.